This is the coffee book tag. Y'all, I love coffee and I'm so excited that Kristen Hackett tagged me. Her information and the link to her original video are down below. I highly recommend that you watch them, along with the original coffee book tag video by Bangity Bangs. I have brewed a special cup in my French press for this video in one of my favorite mugs, and I'm ready to tell you books that match up with some of my favorite types of coffee. So the first question is about black coffee, and this is to name a series that is really hard to get into but has hardcore fans. And for me, this is The Mortal Instruments by Cassandra Clare. I've tried to read it so many times, I just can't get into it. It's probably not for me, but the people who love this series are really into it. Can't really tell you what it's about or what happens, I just know, especially on YouTube, it's a thing. Next up is the Peppermint Mocha, and for this one, we are to name a book that gets more popular during the holiday or festive seasons. For this, I picked Let It Snow by John Green, Maureen Johnson, and Lauren Miracle. These are three separate sort of short stories. They are all about different characters, but the stories all relate. They all take place in a small North Carolina town when a train is forced to stop due to snow on Christmas Eve, and all of the teenagers that their stories kind of relate around this train situation. It's not like the world's best book, but it certainly, I read it on Christmas Eve one year to get me into the Christmas spirit, and it was a nice little humorous, light, fun holiday read. Next up is Hot Chocolate, and for this one we are supposed to name our favorite children's book. I took this to mean picture book. I couldn't really narrow it down, so you know, I want to say Eloise. This is my favorite children's picture book, but I also very recently have come to love all of the books by Mo Willems. He is hilarious. The Pigeon Drives the Bus series and the Nuffle Bunny series. I really enjoy these. But then I also forever and always will have a place in my heart for anything and everything ever written by John Sheska. I mean, who doesn't love The Stinky Cheese Man? It's like one of the most important books of my life. The next one is A Double Shot of Espresso, and that is a book that kept you on the edge of your seat. For this one, I had to pick Confessions by Kanae Minato, which is a book translated from the Japanese into English just this past year, I believe. Hugely popular in Japan. This is the story of a teacher who finds out that her students have killed her 3 or 4-year-old daughter, and she is trying to get revenge on them. So she's giving them this long speech, and she knows who did it and why, and it's all sort of psychological and crazy, and I just didn't even know what to expect. And when she kind of revealed it early in the story, I was like, oh my God, what's going to happen next? And the great thing about this is I actually read this book in Japan, in Tokyo this summer, because I was sitting in a train station waiting to go to Disneyland. That's a whole nother story, but I was just sitting and I read it in the entire afternoon. So reading the Japanese novel, keeping me on the edge of my seat in Japan, was a really great reading experience. And I just thought I had to share that. The next one is Starbucks, which is where we have to name a book that we see everywhere. And I'm not going to say The Fault in Our Stars for this because that's too cliche. I'm going to say Throne of Glass by Sarah J. Maas because everybody in the book blogosphere is talking about it. Everybody on YouTube is talking about it. Everybody at these conferences I go to they're talking about this book. So I know I need to read it. I'm not really into high fantasy, but I feel like I'm missing out because apparently it's an incredible series and maybe one that I would actually like. So because I see it everywhere, that also may inspire me to read it. The next one is that Hipster Coffee Shop, which I do actually have a hipster coffee shop here in my town that I love to go to. And for the Hipster Coffee Shop, it's to give a shout out to an indie author. So I have a few indie authors that I'm big fans of, but my favorite book is probably Flat Out Love by Jessica Park. This is a 4-star read. I mean, it was not a mind-blowing book, but it was really fun. It's a story about a dysfunctional family. The protagonist, Julie, is living with this dysfunctional family while she's in college and getting to know all the different members of the family. And I liked that while it was her story as a college student, also the parents were very present and the family was very present in the story. It was really funny. It's super cute. It's a romance and it was just a really fun read. So that's my favorite indie author, Jessica Park. Next up is the terrible coffee dilemma of, oops, I accidentally got decaf. And this is a book that we are expecting more from, but fell short of those expectations. And for me, that was The Maze Runner. So one of my favorite books from maybe childhood was House of Stairs by William Slater, and all of his books actually, and I really enjoyed those, and I thought this would be very similar. It's a dystopian novel. They're in a maze, they're trying to get out, it's like someone is controlling them, but for some reason I was let down by the ending. It didn't go where I thought it would go. I didn't like the characters, and I was not convinced to continue reading the series or even to go see the movie for that matter. So I just fell short of my expectations. And the last category is the perfect blend, which is the series that is both bitter and sweet. The only one that really could fit the bill for this for me was the Delirium series by Lauren Oliver. I have a love-hate relationship with this series. At the end of Delirium, I was thrilled that it ended the way that it ended. I actually enjoyed Pandemonium. And then Requiem was kind of a hot mess of a finale to the series, and I don't feel like the series really had an adequate ending. That's why it was quite bitter for me. But I also liked some of the things that happened with some of the secondary characters. So I can't say I completely hate where this went. So a little bittersweet, bitter and sweet for me. So that's it for the coffee book tag questions. I want to tag a couple of people who I think would enjoy doing this tag. The first one is Jess at Tiny Reads, because I know she loves coffee as much as I do. And I also want to tag Mike at A Slice of Mike and Mandy at Oh It's Mandy. I don't know if you guys like coffee, but maybe you'll like doing this tag. And I also tag you, anonymous viewer. If you want to do these questions, then I give you permission to go forth and combine your love of coffee and books and tell me about it. That's all for today, and I'll see you next time. Here's a cat down here. By the way, she's my little buddy. She's gonna help me do this video. You can see her tail. All right, Daddy, go. Such a sweet cat, but you're in the way. Okay. Just gonna knock down all the books, whatevs. And this one was pretty easy for me. Oh. Oh. Yeah, so